Hi guys, it's Erin. Today we're going to do a few seemingly random tasks, but they are not at all random. Everything we're going to do today has the purpose of getting prepared for this winter and this fall and ultimately next spring. It's pretty exciting. The weather has been so warm. It's kind of hard to think about fall and next spring, but today's kind of perfect day for it. The weather has turned a little bit. It's rainy off and on and just perfect for this kind of work. So in our zone, zone 8B, Pacific Northwest, our last frost date, our first frost date is roughly the middle of November. So the 15th-ish. Some years it's earlier, some years it's quite a bit later. But we're going to go with that as our timeline. And right now it's the first week in September. So we're about 10 weeks from that first frost. So the things that we're going to do today is we're going to dig up and put into dormancy the Amaryllis bulbs that we saved and grew on from last Christmas time. We're also going to cover up some dahlia heads, bloom heads, so that we can save seed in the near future, do some hand pollinating and seed saving. And then we're also going to talk about hardy annuals. I'm going to go through all the plants that I plan on growing this year. I will talk to you. There's a few that need to go in the freezer right now. There's a few that will just wait and will direct sow in a few weeks. And then there's a few that I need to get into seed trays today so that they'll be ready to go out into the fields in a couple of weeks. Really, ultimately, the goal is for me to be able to get all of these plants into the field right about the first week in October. That way there's still 6 weeks before our first frost. And that way everything has a chance to really root in and hopefully do really well between now and then. And then the goal obviously is to have really full, beautiful flowers as early as possible in the spring. So first things first, we're going to take care of the Amarillis. I have a couple that I left in pots last year. They've just been living out here on the bench out front of the greenhouse since last winter. So we're going to take those, and then I'll go dig up the other two that were in the garden out front, that are currently in the garden out front, and we'll get these into the flower cooler. Okay, so I'm going to take you along while we go get those ready, and then once we get in there, I will talk to you about the basic timeline for putting your amaryllis into dormancy and when you can expect to get blooms again when you pull them back out. These amaryllis are looking pretty good. A little bit of bug damage. I think this one probably got too much water, but we're gonna rectify that here in a little bit. I'll just collect these and put them in our wagon. These two have been loving their lives out here in the garden. So I'm just gonna dig these up. We'll put them in these little nursery cans, and then I'll walk you through what happens next. Look at these roots. That pot's not going to work. Just put it into this bucket. All right, so the basic timeline for reblooming your amaryllis goes like this. So you let them bloom in the spring or in the winter, Christmas time, January, whenever it is that they bloom. You carry them on as like basically a house plant throughout the rest of the winter and the spring. And then once your nighttime temperatures warm back up into the 50s or 60s, you can plant them outside. You can either leave them in the pot, you can put them in the ground like I did. I tried both to see what would happen. And then you just let them grow until between 2 and 3 months before you want them to come back and start blooming again. You pull them and you put them into dormancy. So dormancy looks like you pull them out of the ground, you stop watering them altogether, you put them in a place that's dark and cool, 55 degrees, give or take. And then you just let them sit there for the next 2 to 3 months. So I'm pulling mine at the beginning of September. I'm going to pull them back out of dormancy at the beginning of November, 2 months. And then from there, it'll take 4 to 6 weeks. Once you pull them back out and you repot them, give them water, and put them someplace warm and bright in your house, that'll take 4 to 6 weeks for them to bloom again. So I may or may not, depending on how these guys do, have blooms for Christmas, but hopefully. But if you can do this at any time, really, you could leave them dormant until January or February and pull them out, and then March or April you'll have blooms. It's really up to you at that point, as long as you give them the time to go dormant and then give them a chance to come back to life. So I'm going to go put these in the flower cooler. Real simple. It'll stay dark. It's always cool in there. And then in a couple months, we'll bring them back out and see what they look like. All right, so that's good to go. The light only comes on when you go in there, so it should be dark. I turned on the cool bot so that it would stay around 55 degrees. The cool part about having this now, this year, is that I can do the same thing with my ranunculus, and I plan to. As soon as it's time, which isn't too far off actually, I should start getting my shipments here this month of my ranunculus, and I will start them pre-sprouting in the cooler where it's nice and cool, so they'll have the best start possible. So, okay, that was chore number 1. Got those in there. They're good to go. Next up is to go cover some dahlia heads, and I'll talk you through that as we do it. Okay, so saving seeds from dahlias. The reason I put these muslin bags over the dahlias is so that I have a chance to catch them and try to hand pollinate them before the bees do. So depending on how much you know about dahlia. So there's a couple really great books about saving seed and pollinating dahlias. One, Florette has a really great one, Discovering Dahlias. And then Santa Cruz Dahlias. Gosh, I can't think of her name at the moment. She has a fantastic book that walks you step by step how to do this. So I just want to show you real quick what I just did, why I chose the flowers that I chose, and then just the basics. So dahlias have something, I think they have 8 chromosomes. So whether the bees pollinate or you pollinate them, it's a complete crapshoot on what you're actually going to get as far as a flower the following year. The bees, so hand pollinating sort of hedges my bets. The bees tend to love more than anything these open pollinated because it's easy, or open centered dahlias because it's easy to get to them. So they just, I mean, if it's easy to get to the pollen, why would you go digging in and putting all the extra effort into a different type of dahlia? So these guys generally pollinate really well, and they cross pollinate amongst all the other dahlias. When you hand pollinate, the idea is to put that muslin bag on the dahlia before it opens, like this. You can see this one, before the bees have had a chance to get to it, before it's opened enough. That's the plan. Get them covered at that point, and then once they open up enough that you can start to see the pollen in between the petals. Let me see if I can find one that is a good example that I can show you. Here, I'll just cut this one off. So this dahlia, as beautiful as it is, it's open too far. In between these petals in there, it's really hard for me to show you, but there's little bits of pollen that the bees have already been able to get into. Man, this really is a beautiful flower. So the bees have already gotten in there. There's a good chance that they've crossed this one with an open center. And my goal is to cross the closed centers, the ball type, the informal decorative, the pompons, cross those varieties together and hopefully get fewer of the open centers, although they are lovely, don't get me wrong, and get more of this type. So next year, 2025, I do plan to have a separate sort of dahlia garden that's just for growing my seedling dahlias. This field will still have all of the tuber varieties that I love to grow so much, but I'm going to grow a bunch from seed, and hopefully, who knows what beauty that comes of that, because like I said, you never really know. So I'm going to turn the camera around. I'll show you the different varieties that I picked and why, and we'll go from there. Okay, first things first, I picked this one. This is called Bridezilla, one of my absolute favorites. The shape of this flower is just, it's gorgeous. I love it so much. I think it's an informal decorative. As you see, I put the bag around it while it was still closed up, so the bees haven't gotten to it. You'll see it later looking like this. When this flower starts opening up and looking like this, I'll take off the cover, hand pollinate it with a different dahlia, and then cover it back up and let it just sit there for the rest of the time and let it go to seed so that it can hopefully recreate or reproduce some seedlings that have a similar shape to this one. The next variety that I picked was actually Cafe au Lait. I love her. Most people do. She's just stunning all the time. But she's also a really good seed producer. A lot of the seedlings that I've started in the past have come from her. So I'm going to cross her with hopefully a couple of these other ones that I've bagged up and get a bunch of really good seed from her. Man, even through the bag, she's beautiful. Okay, so the next baby that I covered up is this variety. This is called Fatima, I don't know how to say it, but she's beautiful. I love this super bright pink fuchsia. It almost glows, it's so bright. But I want to cross this one with one of the other ones and see if I can't get that color in a different shape or whatever comes of it. These are really beautiful, and a lot of times naturally these really tight pom-pom or ball varieties, they don't get nearly as pollinated as often, so they don't have as many seed, but we're gonna give it a go. And the last one is this Cornell Bronze. She's so pretty. This one is Cornell, but I love the shape. I really do like a good ball. They're fantastic in bouquets. And this color I like, so I covered this one up early so that we can hopefully get, like I said, get some good cross-pollinating where I want it, and then see what comes of it next summer. I have some serious deadheading to do out here. All right, so now that you've seen that, this is just the first step. You absolutely don't have to do this part of it. You can always just take the seeds that develop on their own and grow those. And I don't know about you, but I've never seen a dahlia that wasn't beautiful. No matter the form, they're all gorgeous. So this is an extra step that I like to do. I like to experiment. I like to see what comes. So I do this most seasons, but like I said, you absolutely don't have to. It's just something fun that I like to do to sort of breaks up the season. This is one that we cross-pollinated between Breakout and Cafe au Lait. And oh man, is it ever stunning. Love it, love it, love it. All right, and the last thing to do today is to work on some hardy annuals. Like I said, it's the beginning of September. It's the right time. Some of it I might be a little bit late on, but that's okay. We're gonna give it a go anyhow. Seeds are not terribly expensive, so we're gonna give it a shot. All right, so I'm gonna turn the camera around and I'll show you the rows that I plan on putting these hardy annuals and some biennials in, and then we'll go talk about the specifics. Okay guys, this is the top of the bed. So the struggle that I have is that I didn't think this all the way through at the beginning of the season for some of my plants here. So this bed right here that has all these snapdragons, this one I can clear out and get prepped to fill. This one, however, not so much. I've got all of my eucalyptus and scented geraniums, and down at the end is even my chrysanthemums. So I don't want to pull those just yet. These ones might end up being full of the direct seeded at the end of the season. This bed is already emptied out except for the sunflowers, but they're only a couple weeks off from blooming, and then I can clear it all out. And this bed I can pretty much pull. I do want to give these cosmos a little bit longer, but as you were with me, I planted some, direct seeded some up at the other end of the field in June, and they're getting ready to bloom, so I don't have to worry about these quite as much. And then this row I've been talking about for far too long. I need to just come out here and pull all of this. Every bit down here is done. Some of these foxglove never bloomed, but that's fine. We'll just pull them all and start fresh. And then this first row is full of beautiful fall foliages that I am not going to pull anytime soon. So that really leaves me with 1, 2, 3, 4 beds to fill, and I have all the biennials and a bunch of hardy annuals that I want to get into these beds. Well, we'll see. I also have up in the bedroom garden, there's about a 20-30 foot row that I can fill with these with hardy annuals also, that are right next to they'll be planted right next to the daffodils, the narcissus. Okay, so, well, this is my dilemma. I gotta figure out what to do, whether I'm gonna pull more, start something earlier, if I want to break up break up where I have all my spring blooming plants, though I really would like to keep them all on this end. So, because this end of the garden still gets full sun even in the dead of winter. Some of it you can see down this way. Those great big trees up there block a lot of the light at the south end of the garden in the winter time. See, I've got beds to clear for sure. Zinnias, this is the craziest zinnia year I think I've ever had. They just keep going. This bed I can clear out and prep for fall. This bed just needs a good deadheading. This one is all done. This one is all done. Straw flowers are still good this time of year. This bed is done. I can pull, well, we did pull it all once and then the dock moved in. It is the hardest weed to deal with around here. Half of this bed is done, but there's still so many beautiful status that I'm not ready to give them up yet. This row is pretty much done. These celosia, if you can see, they're getting ready to start setting seed. It never fails. They bloom out faster than I can cut them, but that's okay. I'm gonna save seed from this. I'll show you that in a couple of weeks too. And then this was our bed that has all the late started direct seeded zinnias and all of our ornamental kale, which are looking really nice right now. A few more weeks and they'll be good to go. And then we have the cosmos right there, gomphrena over there, but everything else in these beds can go. 'Tis the season to start clearing it out. This season we had a bit of a struggle with some of the pests in the garden. So part of that I think is due to we didn't really clear out the beds until the spring. We let it all sit there for the pollinators, which is fine, except there's a lot of bugs that wintered over, I think, in the debris. So we have full intentions of fully clearing out the garden. The only bits that should be still there in the spring is the spring planted or the fall planted biennials and hardy annuals so that they can grow. But everything else I plan to clear it all out, clean it all up, top dress with compost, and just let them sit for the winter, and hopefully that will help with the bugs. We have tried a bunch of beneficial insects like ladybugs and different mites and whatnot to try and curb the problem, and we had some pretty good success with that. But if we can prevent it, all the better. Hi, Winston. This is the other bed that all the hardy annuals will go in. This part where the sunflowers are and the bells of Ireland, that will all be tulips. But this bed right here will clear out and we'll put hardy annuals in. Okay, let's talk cool flowers. Sitting in the edge of the greenhouse. I'm sorry if it's a little echoey, but it's been off and on raining, so I want to do this while under cover. Okay, so let's start first with, there's a few varieties. Well, actually, let's start first with this book. If you don't already have Cool Flowers, this is by Lisa Mason Ziegler. I highly recommend it. This book basically lays out step by step what flowers can be grown starting in the fall and what extra protection some of them may need. I have used this. It's sort of like a reference guide, but it's also beautiful, and it has a ton of information on what types of plants, all the beautiful pictures. It's definitely worth the book. It gives you so much information, specifics for different types of flowers in particular. Like, it'll talk to you about the biennials and the hardy annuals, when to sow them, if they need protection, what the hardiness zones are, all of the above. It's fantastic. So I've gotten a lot of the information from this and from just trial and error and some courses that I've taken. So give this one a try. If you don't already have it, get it, put it in your library. It's definitely worth it. Okay, so we have several varieties, different types of hardy annuals that we're going to not do anything with today except put them into the freezer. I know it sounds funny, but a lot of these, several of these need what's called a cold stratification period before they will sprout. And you can get that naturally, especially if you live in a zone 8B for me, or anything lower than that. It'll definitely, you'll get the cold stratification. But this kind of speeds up the process. It allows the seedlings to germinate, for me anyways, in this zone. It allows the seedlings to germinate and get established before the actual cold comes. Otherwise, many of these would wait. They would just sit there in the garden and hopefully not wash away or get eaten by birds, and wait through the winter while it gets all of that cold time, and then it'll sprout in early spring. You can definitely do it that way. There's nothing wrong with that. I'm trying to, like I said, kind of speed up the process and hedge my bets a little bit. So first one is Bells of Ireland. I adore this plant. I struggle with it off and on every year, depending on if I sow it inside or if I sow it outside. It's always a bit of a struggle, but it's definitely worth it. It's such an interesting flower. It's great for wedding work. It's also really fun in the market bouquets. Half the people don't know what it is. You can tell somebody that's into flowers if they actually know what this is when they buy their flowers. But definitely Bells of Ireland. This one will go into the freezer. I might actually wait another week. I want them to have a couple of weeks in the freezer, and the goal is to get all of these out into the fields by October 1st. So 2 weeks, I might do it. I might wait a week to put all these in there, but that's this guy, Bells of Ireland. The next one is Bupleurum, also another absolutely fantastic spring bloom. These sort of play the role of filler, flower, and foliage at the same time. In the spring, these plants, they're so cool. They get 3, sometimes 4 feet tall in our zone, and they have these sprays of golden yellow flowers with a chartreusey green stem. They're so good, and they are a really fantastic foil for all the pastel soft colors that I tend to grow in the spring. I love having this one to sort of balance that little bright pop of color next to all the soft pinks and everything else that I usually have. So green gold is this variety, Bupleurum. This will go in the freezer for a couple of weeks before I put them out. And then Larkspur. I love this flower so much. I struggled both last year with the Bupleurum and the Larkspur. I didn't have any good luck with them. I don't really know what I did wrong, but we're gonna give it another try. One thing to know when you do, and I'll walk you through it when you do it, but these seeds need to be covered when you do plant them out. These do not. They need the light in order to germinate. So Larkspur, again, another hardy annual that I'll put into the freezer for a couple of weeks. They need that cold stratification period. The colors that I'm gonna grow are the same as I grew last year. I tried to grow last year. I only got a couple that actually sprouted. These are all the QIS series, well, most of them. So dark blue, it's Larkspur's in the Delphinium family. It's one of the few plants that actually gives you blue flowers. And this one, it'll be a really dark blue, almost cobalt, but it'll also have some lavender and some plummy purple in it. It's just one of the best. So dark blue, carmine, which is like a hot pink. It's a really bright pink color, which again, every now and again, you need that hot, bright color to balance out with all the soft spring colors. This one is light pink, which, as the name would suggest, it's just a sort of soft, light pink color. And then misty lavender. This one I really like. It's kind of blue, lavendery purple, but it's soft and almost has a gray hue to it. It's so good. It goes so lovely in bouquets and weddings. This is a really good one to have blooming for wedding work because it's such an unusual sort of color, and it's muted, and oh, so good. So that one as well. So those 3 different types will all go in the freezer today, and I'll leave it maybe today or in a week. I haven't decided yet, but these all need to get into the freezer to get their cold stratification period before I go direct sow them into the field. It also gives me time to go clear out those beds and get them going. Okay, another one that is a direct sow is agrostemma or corn cockle. These don't need to be frozen. They don't need to go get cold stratified, but they do want to be direct sowed. So I'm gonna wait on these a little bit. I'm gonna try to get them in the ground October 1st. These also are really good. It's like a cottage garden sort of feel, and I may or may not put these in the field. They may actually just go into one of my garden beds, and I can cut them from there. These are really pretty decent at self-seeding also. So once I get them in there, I will hopefully be able to have them forever and just reseed themselves every year into the gardens. If you haven't noticed, with most of my garden beds, I really like that cottage garden feel. Full and sort of wild, and these lend to that really well. Another couple of direct seed plants that I'm going to throw into my gardens, not necessarily into the field, are some hollyhock seeds and some cornflower. This is a really blue, obviously, bachelor button. Basically, it's a perennial bachelor button. Most of the bachelor buttons that I have grown in the past have been annuals, so this is a perennial one. I think I'm going to wait a couple weeks to put this one in, to direct sow this one, but excuse me, I'm really looking forward to seeing this one come up. And the hollyhock, I'm actually a little bit late, I think, with putting these in. I'm gonna find a spot in the back of one of these beds over here, probably the St. Francis garden, and plant a few of these and see what happens. I've never grown hollyhock from seed on purpose, so I don't know how it'll do, but it's worth a shot. They're supposed to do really well. They're supposed to be really tall. These colors should be really nice in the back of a garden bed, and yeah, we'll see what happens. Plant spacing. Yeah, these can get really tall, 5 to 6 feet tall. So they need to be in the back of the bed. But I really like hollyhocks, and hopefully they will grow and be happy here. And we'll see what happens. I'm not holding my breath on them because these seeds are a couple years old, but that's okay. I'm gonna give them a try anyhow. Okay, so that's it for the hardy annuals that I plan to direct sow out in the fields. The next, I'm gonna have to get some seed trays going today for Feverfew. I grow the Magic Single. It's kind of funny that I'm even growing these, because once Feverfew is in your garden and it's allowed to go to seed, it will resprout absolutely everywhere, and this one has. I've got it all over the field. My goal, though, is to have it contained in specific areas, and I will do my best to eradicate the rest of it from the rest of the field. It does not need to be everywhere, but I do want to grow it. I like to have it. So I'm gonna grow some. This last year, I only wound up with a small patch of it that I intentionally planted. So this year I'm gonna try and grow a little bit more and not rely on whatever seedlings popped up in the field this year. I've been doing a fairly decent job of cutting and pulling them, so cross your fingers. Okay, so these I need to put into a seed tray today, and I grow the Magic Single variety. I like that little daisy shape. The other ones, the fluffier ones and the limey green or yellow, they're really pretty, but my favorite's always going to be the classic daisy looking feverfew. Okay, and then the other one is snapdragons. So snapdragons, I've talked through this in another video in the past. They're in different groups. There's the 1s and 2s, 3s and 4s, and then the all day varieties. The 1s and 2s, which is what all of these are, these grow better with cooler temperatures and shorter day length. So they will bloom earlier in the season. This is all the Chantilly series of snapdragons that I've got here. And every one of them is supposed to be fantastic for overwintering. They're hardy to this zone. Actually, I think zone 7, so they should be good. I will probably put some frost cloth row covers over them if we get a real cold snap, just to be sure that they're okay. But they don't need low tunnels or anything like that. They should be okay. The biggest hurdle I'm gonna have is probably slugs and making sure that the slugs can't get to them. So I'm gonna try to be diligent with my slug bait maintenance to try and keep them from completely destroying this crop. I've done that in the past. I've grown snapdragons over the winter before, and really the struggle that I had was not the plants themselves, it was the slugs. They absolutely got after them, and I wound up out of a 20-foot bed, I maybe got 10 plants but those 10 plants, they bloomed really early and they did really well. So I'm just gonna walk you through the different varieties, and then I will get these all sown into a few seed trays and we'll go from there. So, okay, Chantilly, the first one I'm growing is light pink. As the name would suggest, it's just a really soft, pretty pink, and the earlier in the season I can get those kind of soft colors, the better, because most everything that I grow for that early season is soft pastels. Chantilly series, they're along the lines of the Madame Butterfly series. They're an azalea type. They're not the typical snapdragons that you're used to where you can squeeze the sides and it makes it look like they're talking. They're really fluffy. They look like an azalea blossom. I'll put pictures up. But this light pink should be really nice. I'm gonna see how many seeds I actually have and try to do a tray of each of these colors. That would give me an entire bed out in the fields of just snapdragons, early season snapdragons. The next one that I have is Chantilly Cream Yellow. Again, really pretty, soft yellow. That azalea flower type is my favorite by far. I don't think I'm gonna grow, I might grow a few, but I'm gonna try to just grow these Chantilly and the Madame Butterfly series this coming season, just because that's what I prefer. They're softer, more romantic, just really beautiful. So the cream yellow. And then the next one is just Chantilly white. I don't think I have a whole lot of seeds, so we may or may not get a full tray. Chantilly purple. This is a brighter color, but it's also the same beautiful shape. And again, like with the other things, every now and again, a pop of brighter color is good. And then we have Chantilly light salmon. I really like those peachy, salmon-y sort of colors. They go with a lot of different color palettes, and this one is a soft version of that. And then the last one is Chantilly bronze, which it's a similar coloring to the light salmon, that sort of peachy salmon, bronzy color, sort of browns and oranges, but this one is definitely darker than the light salmon. Okay, and those are all the varieties that we're gonna try to get seeded today, get them into the ground. These will take, they'll take a couple weeks, a week to 2 weeks, maybe quicker because the weather is still warm, to actually germinate. And then they will I'll hopefully have a couple more weeks in here to get fairly strong, and then they can go out in the garden in October, and that will still give them 6 weeks between 4 and 8, depending on this season and when the last frost actually comes, but 6 weeks pretty reliably to get fully established out in the field before any real bad weather comes. So that's the plan. All right, guys, that's going to do it for this video. One thing of note is all of those snapdragons and feverfew, they need light to germinate, so that's why I didn't cover any of them with vermiculite or anything. Just keep them wet. I did spray the water just to settle them in to make sure they have contact with the soil. Yeah, and that's going to be it. So those are good to go. We got a lot done today. We got the Amaryllis into dormancy. We got the dahlias covered so that we can do some hand pollinating in the near future. And we got some good conversation and some work done on hardy annuals. The last thing that I do need to do is get those seedlings into the freezer for the next couple weeks so that they're good to go. All right, I hope that you enjoyed this video. I hope maybe you learned something. It's a good time to give it a try some cool flowers. If you don't have that book, look up Lisa Mason Ziegler Cool Flowers. It's like a really fun to read textbook that has all the details you need if you're in a zone that can handle fall sowing. And actually a lot of the flowers are good to a zone 4, well, good to a zone 7 at least. I think that her zone is a zone 7, which is where all of her research is based on. But we're in a zone 8b, and I have fairly good luck with it. The only thing I need to do is figure out where I'm going to put all these flowers. Okay, so in the next few weeks, we'll be doing lots more preps for fall. I have to get those beds cleared out, get them full of compost. I've got to get the perennials cut back. I've got such a laundry list of things to do that I'm going to take you guys along for. And in the very near future, we'll start getting our deliveries of ranunculus and tulips and everything else that's going to make for a beautiful spring in 2025. Okay, guys, I hope that you, like I said, I hope you enjoyed this. If you liked it, hit a thumbs up. If you haven't already, give it a subscribe, and then I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye.